Hey everyone, welcome back to the Space Doctor series on the Architecting channel. My name is Angela Mazzi, and I am an architect who does research in the science behind design for well-being. And every week I take this opportunity to have a little fun with the science to make it more accessible so that if you are somebody in the design industry, you've got a little bit of a prompt to go into your week with. Or if you aren't from that background, but you just want to understand more about how the built environment is impacting you, this is a great way to learn. So I draw cards from my salutogenesis deck. And by the way, salutogenesis simply means health generating in Latin. And the deck is organized into two parts. One is fundamental concepts, which are general things that can impact well-being. And the other part of the deck is design prompts that are generated from research and theories in one of five major aspects of design for well-being, which are sense of coherence, self-efficacy, prospect and refuge, biophilia, and relaxation response. And don't worry if you don't understand those, because I will explain what they all mean. So I shuffle the cards, I set an intention, and I just draw two from each part of the deck. So we never know what's going to get paired up. So even if I do draw a card that I've drawn before, it's going to get paired up with something different. So we're going to talk about it in a different way. So this week, the card that I drew from the fundamental concepts section of the deck is neuroplasticity. So what is that? That is the ability of the neurons in our brain to rewire, to form different connections. So you can see on the card, the brain has different areas that light up that are connected different ways. And we've got this series of network connections. So what does this mean when we think about design? Well, the experiences that we have in a space are going to create what I call environmental anchors. So there may be certain colors, certain materials, or patterns, or types of things in a space that trigger certain memories. So I grew up going to Catholic school for 12 years, and we had to wear plaid uniforms. I hated wearing uniforms. As a creative person, I found it really oppressive that I couldn't choose what I wanted to wear, or I couldn't express how I felt that day through the way that I dressed. And I would do everything I could with accessories. I would even color the plaid squares that were white with chalk to make them different colors. I hated it so much. And as a result, I have a real trigger around plaid. I don't want to wear it. I don't want to use it. I don't want to see it. Because to me, plaid represents limits to expression, limits to creativity. And I don't like that. You could have an association with, say, a sofa that your mother-in-law offered to buy you as a wedding gift, and you really hate it, but it was the best of what was available in the store she wanted to shop, or the price range she was willing to pay. And now every time you see that sofa, you have a negative feeling inside. Or you might have a experience with getting lost in healthcare institutions. So now every time you go to a healthcare institution, you have a habit of expectation around it's going to be hard to find my way around. And those can be self-actualizing. So any kind of habit we have, any kind of automatic series of tasks we do, any kind of beliefs we have or expectations, those are all governed by networks of neurons in our brains. It used to be believed that those networks formed and were permanent, so that the brain only had neuroplasticity in childhood. However, More recent neuroscience has shown that neuroplasticity is something that stays with us our whole life. So if you start to notice certain things that you think, certain patterns or certain habits that you want to change, it is absolutely possible to form new connections. And then the old ones kind of atrophy and die off. So you can kind of think of this the way that, say, the Grand Canyon was formed simply by the Colorado River over years, kind of wearing through and eroding a path. But now that channel is so pronounced and so deep that it would be very, very difficult for the river to reroute itself. So the more ingrained something is, the tougher it is to change, but it can happen. So the second card I drew from the aspects section of the deck comes again from sense of coherence. So sense of coherence, again, is how meaningful, manageable, and comprehensible our space is to us. We got a sense of coherence card last week, but this week's card is confirmation bias. And the image here is a classroom with the emphasis on the blackboard and some really bad grades. So if any of you have ever had an experience of anxiety in the classroom, or you're not a good test taker, or you struggled as a student, you probably have a lot of confirmation bias wrapped up in the school experience. And that might be affecting your decisions around continuing education. It might trigger you if at your employment you ever have to go through a training. Might even affect, if you have children, how you feel about your ability to help them. Or when you go to the school, you may have some negative emotions or experiences. And I love the way the cards, just randomly chosen, happen to pair together. I mean, confirmation bias is a result of neuroplasticity, because confirmation bias is seeing what we expect to see. Now, this is really common when we think about politics. If we like somebody, they can do no wrong, and no matter what they do, we will see it in a positive light. If we don't like somebody, nothing they do will be right, and we will find a way to put negative attributes onto even the biggest accomplishments because we don't want to see the good. That's a really obvious one that probably most of you can identify with. But confirmation bias can happen when we think about places and spaces too. If we've had a bad experience, say, in a religious institution, we may have a lot of negative connotations with symbolic elements in churches. I talked about the school experience. We definitely see it in healthcare, where people have had experiences that were tough, where there was fear, there was loss, there was anxiety associated with being in that setting, or someone they know had those experiences. So when they go, they don't see the good things, they see all of the things that are bad. And it becomes a trickier thing to overcome. So now that we understand these two concepts of what is neuroplasticity, how that works, and confirmation bias and how it works, let's put them together and let's think about what that means as we want to create a more positive or health generating environment. Well, the first thing is that we can use different environmental anchors that are positive to replace the ones that are negative. So if we think about what it is about a kind of space that is triggering that negative response, then we can either remove those elements or add other positive things in. So, for example, if you think about something that is fun or enjoyable or relaxing, You may want to have things that remind you of a day at the spa or a coffee shop, or even elements of fun or discovery that are within the space, or something you love or that represents an achievement for you or a goal that you could have that you could put in the space. You can also think about if there is something that you can isolate, like a couch, for example, get rid of it, right? Let's just take it out of the space and no longer have that trigger. But we can use that neuroplasticity to train ourselves to have different associations by switching out things that have negative connotations within the space. And that little bit of jarring in our brain, that unexpected positive association over time will start to change things. The other way that we can think about this is the idea of habits. So, habits are series of actions that we automatically do and that we will normally describe as one thing. So, we might say, I drive to work. Well, driving to work actually has probably over 100 different steps involved in getting from your home to wherever it is that you are working. However, we think of it as one thing because all of those steps for us have become a habit. So think about the habits that you might have or people you're designing for might have in a space that you are designing or want to improve, and then unpack the steps of those habits and think about ways that you could positively change them. So, if it involves something that feels hard or difficult to you, what could you substitute? What could you move so that you move through the space in a different way, or the process of doing something becomes easier or better or different because the sequence is different because of the way that the space is designed or where things are located in that space. So I hope these prompts give you some great ideas about what we might be doing that we're taking for granted, that's automatic, but that doesn't have to be that way. What are we tolerating in our built environment that we can actively take steps to change? Make sure you let me know. And I'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts on what you changed because you listened to this video and learned something good. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode. And go ahead and check out some of the past episodes so that you can continue to learn something new there. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next time.